your future. Continue cashing in on your future.
Welcome back to CASHIN Conversations. I am Nicole Smith, and this is a space where we reflect on leadership, growth, purpose, and the everyday conversations that help us discover and develop the potential that already exists within us. Episode 4 is about accountability. Now, accountability is the second principle in the CASHIN framework. CASHIN stands for communication, accountability, service, humility, integrity, and nurturing. Communication comes first because we have to be honest about what's happening. Accountability comes next because once we are honest, we have to decide what we're going to do about that truth. Accountability is ownership. It is the willingness to take responsibility for our choices, our actions, our commitments, growth, and future. But accountability is not shame. It's not about beating yourself up. It's not replaying every mistake until you feel stuck. Accountability is not punishment. Accountability is participation. Think about it as a moment you stop watching your life from the outside and decide to become an active participant in your own growth. Recently, I had a conversation with myself. Not the kind of conversation where I was avoiding the truth. Not the kind where I was making excuses. Not the kind where I was pretending everything was fine. It was one of those honest conversations where I had to ask myself, Dana, what do you already know? That question made me pause and sit down. Because sometimes we're not confused. Sometimes we're avoiding what we already know. Sometimes we keep asking for more signs, more confirmation, more time, more information, or more support, when deep down we already know the next step. That is where accountability begins. It begins when we are willing to tell ourselves the truth. So for me, accountability has not always been simple because I have spent much of my life being accountable for others. As a mother, as a leader, as a student, as a professional, as a person who often had to figure things out, keep going, make decisions, and hold things together. But there's a difference between carrying responsibility and practicing accountability. You see, responsibility can become heavy when we are carrying things that don't belong to us. Accountability becomes healthy when we take ownership of what does belong to us. Our choices, our healing, our habits, our boundaries, our growth, our next step. So in my conversation with self, I had to ask, what promise have I made to myself that still deserves my attention? That question stayed with me because many of us are good at keeping promises to other people. We show up, we help, we encourage, we support, we remind, we carry, we serve. But sometimes we break promises to ourselves quietly. We say we're going to rest, but we keep pushing. We say we're going to start, but we keep delaying. We say we're going to believe in ourselves, but we keep shrinking. We say we're going to make ourselves a priority, but we keep moving our own needs to the bottom of the list. Accountability asks us to notice that, not the shame, with honesty. So one of the questions in the CASHIN 90 accountability series is, what promise have you made to yourself that deserves your attention? That question is simple, but it's not small. Because the promises we make to ourselves shape how we trust ourselves. Every time we keep a promise to ourselves, we build trust. Every time we follow through, even in a small way, we tell ourselves, I can count on me. That is powerful. Because accountability is not only about big goals, it's also about small follow through, making the call, writing the page, taking the walk, having the conversation, submitting the application, setting the boundary, drinking the water, getting back up, and starting again. So sometimes accountability looks like discipline. Sometimes it looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like saying yes. Sometimes it looks like saying no. Sometimes it looks like admitting I was wrong. Sometimes it looks like saying I need help. And sometimes it looks like choosing not to abandon yourself again. That is part of conversations with self. It is the practice of asking ourselves honest questions and staying present long enough to answer. What am I avoiding? What excuse am I ready to release? What responsibility belongs to me? What action can I take today? What decision would my best self make? Accountability does not require us to fix everything at once. It asks us to take the next honest step. That matters in leadership too. As I continue through the final stages of my doctoral journey in organizational leadership, my dissertation focuses on leadership communication and its relationship with the psychological safety of employees and organizations. That work reminds me that accountability and safety are not opposites. Healthy accountability does not require fear. Healthy accountability does not require humiliation. Healthy accountability does not require people to feel small. In healthy environments, accountability can exist with trust. People can own mistakes without being destroyed by them. People can receive feedback without being shamed. People can grow because the expectation is clear and the environment is safe enough for honesty. That is true in organizations. It's also true in families. It's true in coaching. It's true in relationships. And it is true within ourselves. If the only way we hold ourselves accountable is through criticism, we may become afraid of our own reflection. But when accountability is rooted in honesty, grace, and responsibility, it can become a pathway to growth. I'm learning that accountability sounds different when it is healthy. It does not say, you failed, so you might as well stop. It says, you noticed it, now what is the next step? It does not say, you are behind, so there's no point. It says, you can begin again. It does not say, you should have known better. It says, now that you know better, what will you do differently? That is the kind of accountability that develops people. That is the kind of accountability that builds trust. That is the kind of accountability that helps potential grow. One thing I have to remind myself is this. Accountability is not the enemy of compassion. Accountability and compassion can sit at the same table. Compassion helps us understand what happened. Accountability helps us decide what happens next. Compassion gives us the grace to be human. Accountability gives us the courage to keep going. That is why accountability is such an important part of CASHIN. Because potential does not develop through intention alone. Potential develops through investment, and investment requires action. We can believe in ourselves and still need discipline. We can have purpose and still need structure. We can have gifts and still need follow-through. We can have vision and still need a plan. We can have support and still need ownership. So today, I want to invite you into a conversation with yourself. Not a conversation filled with judgment, not a conversation filled with shame, a conversation rooted in honesty. So ask yourself, what promise have I made to myself that deserves my attention? Then choose one small action, not 10, not 20, one. One action that tells your future self, I'm still invested. One action that builds trust with yourself. One action that moves you from intention into ownership. Because accountability is not about perfection. It's about participation. It's about ownership. It's about follow through. It's also about telling the truth and taking the next right step. As you move through this week, pay attention to the promises you make to yourself. Pay attention to the excuses that try to keep you still. Pay attention to the places where you are ready to take ownership without caring what does not belong to you. And remember, accountability is not punishment. Accountability is an invitation to participate in your own growth. This has been CASHIN Conversations. I am Dana Nicole Smith. Continue cashing in on your future, build the roots, plant the seeds, nurture the growth.